She opened her eyes and the airplane was gone. No seats. No engine noise. No mother beside her. Just the sound of rain hitting leaves somewhere above, and a pain in her left shoulder so sharp it erased everything else. Julianne Koepke, 17 years old, lay on the floor of the Peruvian Amazon on Christmas morning, 1971, still strapped to a row of 3 seats that had fallen 10,000 feet from the sky. Her collarbone was broken. A gash ran deep across her right arm. One eye was swollen shut. Her knee wouldn't straighten. And the last thing she remembered was her mother's voice, calm, almost matter-of-fact, saying 4 words as lightning split the wing of Lanza Flight 508. Now it's all over. 92 people were on that plane. Julianne was the only one who would walk out of this jungle. She just didn't know it yet. Nobody did. The search teams wouldn't find the wreckage for days. And when they finally called off the search after 10 days of looking, she was still walking. She had 1 bag of candy, a sleeveless dress, no shoes on 1 foot, a broken body, and 11 days of jungle between her and the nearest human being. Here's what those 11 days looked like. Julianne had grown up in this forest. Not this exact stretch, but close enough. Her parents, Maria and Hans Wilhelm Koepke, were German zoologists who had built a research station called Panguana deep in the Amazon when Julianne was 14. She knew what a Hoatzin sounded like. She knew which frogs could kill you. And she knew one rule her father had drilled into her so many times it had become reflex. Follow water downhill. Streams lead to rivers. Rivers lead to people. She pulled herself out from under the seat. The forest floor was soaked, dark, and loud with insects. She tried to stand and her knee buckled. She tried again. This time she stayed up. She called for her mother. She called until her voice gave out. Nobody answered. She found a small creek near the crash site. Beside it, half buried in mud and leaves, a bag of hard candy, the kind they had handed out on the plane. She picked it up. It would be the only food she would eat for the next 11 days. She started walking. Or rather, waiting. Her father had told her something else about jungle travel. Stay in the water. It's easier to move. Snakes avoid the current. And the stream will grow. She stepped in. The water was knee-deep, brown, and cold. Every step sent a jolt through her broken collarbone. She kept her injured arm pressed against her body and moved downstream, 1 foot at a time. The first 2 days blurred together. Rain fell constantly, heavy sheets of water that turned the creek into a rushing channel and soaked through her thin dress until it clung to her skin like wet paper. She couldn't sleep. Not because of the pain, although the pain was constant. Because of the noise. The jungle at night is not quiet. It screams. Cicadas, frogs, things she couldn't see crashing through the undergrowth. Every sound could be a jaguar. Every shadow could be a snake. She lay on the bank with her knees pulled to her chest and waited for morning. By day 3, the candy was running low. She rationed it, 2 pieces in the morning, 1 at midday, 1 before dark. Calories she could count on 1 hand. Her body was already consuming itself, pulling energy from muscle and fat to keep her legs moving. The creek had widened into something that almost looked like a stream. That was good. Wider water, closer to people. That was the theory. But the jungle gave no indication that anyone had ever set foot here. On the 4th day, she heard a sound she recognized from Panguana, the heavy wing beat of a king vulture landing. She knew what that meant. Vultures don't land in the canopy. They land where there's something dead. She followed the sound. Around a bend in the creek, she found a row of 3 airplane seats driven nose first into the mud. 3 passengers still strapped in. She stood there, unable to move. Her chest locked. She needed to know if one of them was her mother. She reached out with a stick and touched the nearest body. The woman's toenails were painted. Her mother never painted her nails. It wasn't her. Julianne backed away and kept walking. That night something shifted inside her. She stopped calling for help. She stopped expecting rescue. She started talking to herself instead, organizing, planning, repeating the same 3 words every morning like a prayer. Water. Shelter. Signal. She said it when she woke. She said it when her niece screamed. She said it when the loneliness pressed down on her so hard she couldn't breathe. Water. Shelter. Signal. Don't skip ahead. Her watch stopped working on December 28th. After that, she counted days by sleep cycles, though sleep was Jenner's word for what she managed. 20 minutes here, an hour there, jolted awake by rain or insects, or the sound of her own breathing in the dark. She lost track of time in the way you lose track of a road in fog. It was still there. She just couldn't see it. The stream kept growing. By day 5 or 6, it had become a small river, wide enough that she could float on her back and let the current carry her. She saved energy this way, but the water brought new problems. Logs jammed across the river every few hundred meters. Each one meant climbing out, dragging herself over, and sliding back in. With a broken collarbone and one functioning arm, every log was a small battle she wasn't sure she'd win. And then there were the things in the water. She saw caimans on the banks, small ones, watching her with yellow eyes. She kept moving. She saw fish scatter beneath her feet. Piranhas, probably, though they rarely attack a living person in moving water. Probably. She kept that word close. It was the best she had. Day 7. The candy was gone. She had nothing. The rainy season meant no fruit on the trees. She had no knife to cut palm hearts, no way to cook roots, no means to catch fish. She drank river water and moved forward on nothing but momentum, and whatever her body could pull from its own reserves. Her ribs were visible now. The dress hung off her like it belonged to someone else. She could feel her thinking slow down. Decisions that should have taken a second took 5, 10, 30 seconds. The wound on her right arm had started to change on day 4. By day 7, she could feel movement inside it. Not a twitch. Not a pulse. Something burrowing. Botfly larvae had colonized the gash. She could see them when she pulled the skin apart, pale, fat, alive. She counted them when she couldn't sleep. She stopped counting at 20. Day 9. She was floating downstream, too tired to walk, when her foot hit something solid. Not a log. Not a rock. The hull of a boat. She didn't believe it. She reached out and touched the wood with both hands, pressing her fingers into the grain to make sure it was real. It was real. A canoe, tied to a stake on the bank. Beside it, a narrow path cut uphill through the vegetation. She crawled up the path. At the top was a shelter. A palm leaf roof on wooden poles, open on all sides. A lumberjack camp. No one was there. But inside she found a barrel. She unscrewed the cap and smelled gasoline. She remembered something from Panguana. Her father, kneeling beside their dog, pouring diesel fuel into a wound to force out parasites. She had watched him do it when she was 12. She remembered the dog yelping. She remembered the worms sliding out. Julianne sat down on the wooden platform, extended her arm, and poured gasoline into the open wound. The pain was sharp and instant. But the larvae surfaced, wriggling, desperate for air. She pulled them out one by one. 35. She counted every single one. Later, in interviews, she said she felt proud of herself. It was the first thing she had controlled in 9 days. She lay on the platform that night and looked up through the gaps in the palm roof. She could see stars. She hadn't seen stars since before the flight. In the jungle, the canopy blocks everything: sky, light, perspective. But here, in this small clearing, the sky opened up. She lay still and watched them move. It was the most beautiful thing she had seen in 9 days. It was also the loneliest. She thought about taking the boat. There was a motor. There was fuel. But it wasn't her boat. She had been raised by scientists who studied this forest with permission, who respected the people who lived in it. Taking something that didn't belong to her felt wrong, even now. Even dying. She stayed in the shelter and waited. What Julianne didn't know, what she had no way of knowing, was that the official search for Lanza Flight 508 had been called off the day before she found the shelter. 10 days of aerial searches over hundreds of square miles of canopy had found nothing. The jungle had swallowed the plane whole. Every passenger was presumed dead. All 92. Including her. The morning of January 3, 1972, day 11, she heard voices. She had heard voices before. On day 6 or day 7, she had heard what sounded like a helicopter somewhere above the canopy. She had screamed and waved her arms. Nothing happened. The canopy was too thick. They couldn't see her. She couldn't see them. After that, she stopped looking up. So when she heard men's voices on day 11, she assumed she was hallucinating. The voices grew louder. She didn't move. Then 3 men stepped into the clearing and stopped dead. They stared at her. She stared back. She was gaunt, sun-blistered, covered in insect bites, her arm freshly treated with gasoline, her dress torn beyond recognition. Later, the men would say they thought she was a water spirit from local legend, a blonde, pale figure that rises from the river. She spoke in Spanish. "I'm Julianne. I was in the Lanza crash." They didn't believe her. No one had survived that crash. Julianne Coep survived a 10,000-foot fall from the sky and walked alone through the Amazon for 11 days on a bag of candy and river water. If that story doesn't demand to be heard, nothing does. Subscribe, because the jungle has more stories it hasn't told yet. The men fed her carefully, small amounts, slowly. They cleaned her wounds and built a fire. The next morning, they placed her in the canoe she had refused to steal and paddled 7 hours downriver to a lumber station. From there, a local pilot flew her 15 minutes to a hospital in Pucallpa. The flight was short and smooth. She did not look out the window. Her father was waiting at the hospital. He had not stopped searching. When the official search ended, he had organized his own, hiring local guides and chartering boats. He hadn't found the wreckage. He hadn't found his daughter. But he hadn't stopped. From her hospital bed, Julianne gave rescuers the information they needed to find the crash site. On January 12th, they found the wreckage. They found the bodies. They found Maria Coep. 14 passengers, including Julianne's mother, had survived the initial crash. They had been alive in the jungle, waiting for help that was coming, and then stopped coming. They died where they sat. Julianne carried that knowledge for the rest of her life. She carried the question that never has a clean answer. Not, "How did I survive?" That one has physics and luck and thick foliage. The other question. The one that wakes you at 3 in the morning. Why her and not them? Why her and not her mother? She went back to Germany. She studied biology at the University of Kiel, then earned a doctorate in Munich. She became a mammalogist specializing in bats. In 1989, she married a German entomologist named Erich Diller. In 2000, when her father died, she took over Panguana, the research station in the Amazon where she had learned to follow water downhill, to identify a king vulture by sound, to pour gasoline on a wound and count what comes out. In 1998, she returned to the crash site with filmmaker Werner Herzog, who had a reason of his own to be there. He had been booked on Lanza Flight 508. A last-minute schedule change had pulled him off the passenger list. He had spent 27 years thinking about the flight he didn't take. Julianne had spent 27 years thinking about the fall she did. She walked through the wreckage with him. Pieces of fuselage. A wheel half buried in mud. Seat frames rusted into the forest floor. The jungle had reclaimed almost everything. It does that. It takes things back. But Julianne was still here. She had refused to be taken back. At 17, alone, broken, starving, with no map and no hope of rescue, she had followed a creek until it became a river, and a river until it became a life. She wrote a memoir in 2011. The German title translates to, "When I fell from the sky, how the jungle gave me my life back." In it, she described the moment she regained consciousness on the forest floor, Christmas morning, 1971. The rain on the leaves. The pain in her shoulder. The silence where the engine noise used to be. And the decision, not dramatic, not heroic, just stubborn and quiet, to stand up.